We have some new Hunter Biden news from the House Oversight Committee. In July of 2019, 3 months after Joe Biden announced he was running for president, his son Hunter reportedly received a $250,000 loan from a Chinese business associate. This is the wire that Joe Biden's Delaware House was listed as the address, according to the House Oversight Committee.
The committee also says we now know that neither Hunter Biden nor any other Biden paid that loan back. Instead, Democratic donor and Hollywood lawyer Kevin Morris acquired Hunter Biden's stake in Bohai Harvest RST, one of Hunter's China deals, and assumed the debt for Hunter. So this is really interesting. Based on what we know from the House Oversight Committee, it's unclear what this deal looked like. It sounds like it was $250,000 based on early reporting, and it sounds like this Hollywood lawyer, Morris, acquired the debt, but also acquired Hunter Biden's stake in the Chinese investment company, Bohai Harvest ST. So was this just an investment that Hunter Biden had? Why is it framed as debt? Did Hunter Biden have this investment and also have $250,000 of debt from a Chinese company? And then in exchange for this Hollywood lawyer taking on the debt, Hunter Biden gave him the stake. It's not clear how this deal was exactly executed. We need more information from the Oversight Committee.
I mean, I think at best what it is that this donor, wants to help out the Bidens because he's a Biden supporter. Gives this loan, and then Hunter's not going to pay it back. So instead, this guy gets his stake in this Chinese firm, which I would presume was less than that amount. This was essentially forgiving the debt, but some boon to the donor. That's I guess that's the most above board way of describing it, which is not a very above board way of describing it at all. That's like the least nefarious way I can come up to think about it. Now, apparently, I'm looking at this tweet from the Oversight Committee, and there's a community note on it that points out that I always want to read the community notes. It's a very helpful service on X that you have to provide a address for a foreign transaction. So the transaction is between banks. It's not like the money was showing up at Joe Biden's doorstep necessarily, although it does, it shows how close they are, how overlapping in terms of the paperwork, the paper trail, how much Hunter Biden was totally willing to use Joe Biden's name, address, etc., in a way that is very problematic for his old man. The question becomes, how much does Joe Biden know that's going on, and what rules does it if it breaks any? So the House Oversight Committee says, why is the Democratic donor taking on Hunter Biden's China debt? This raises serious ethical questions that the White House must answer. I mean, I think it's fair to wonder just how compromised was Hunter Biden at times where Joe Biden was in a position to make important political decision to set policy for the U.S. government that affects Ukraine and China. With Ukraine, I mean, President Trump was impeached over allegedly improper questions he had about Ukraine and the Biden. So this became a major, a huge political consequential matter. So we need to investigate the extent to which Hunter Biden was selling access to his father. I mean, it appears that's what he was doing. He was being paid by a Ukrainian energy firm, and they lowered his salary after Joe Biden was no longer the vice president. So clearly they thought they were getting something out of it. What did Biden know about that? Biden has said he had no knowledge of any of his son's business dealings whatsoever at any time, even though we know that's not true. We know he participated in phone calls. We know he met Hunter's business associates at a dinner. He first said he didn't attend this dinner. It's in the Washington Post ancient article about the laptop story. The Washington Post says, yeah, Joe Biden never attended that dinner. What's your source for that? Well, he told us he didn't attend it. Late now, there's a fact check on it. Yeah, he actually did attend it. So it's that kind of stuff over and over again.
Yeah, as someone who's not a cheerleader for the Democratic Party, the House Oversight Committee really seems still like the boy who cried wolf. I was really expecting for them to have something more concrete based on Mike Johnson's recent statement saying, we've got receipts. We're really going to get him. He will likely, be impeached because we've got some evidence of bribery. I hope this isn't what he was talking about, because let's imagine a scenario. this is probably best case scenario, and I don't think it's reality because I don't want to assume Democratic actors always have, the country's best intentions at heart. But let's imagine you're this Democratic donor and you're like, listen, Hunter, if you have this debt to a Chinese company while your father's in office, people might think that you could sway your father to do some favors, for the Chinese government, right? This was a trust that was held by the Bank of China. Let's imagine a world where there's some kind of deal making where Biden does something in the favor of the people of China, and then in exchange, they forgive some of this debt. I think it would be worse if we were in a world where instead of being absolved of the debt, Hunter Biden still owed a debt of $250,000 to China while his father was president. So I think this is a little bit better. I don't think that's what happened. I think Hunter Biden was likely in some financial trouble and did some work with this Morris guy who was aware of the situation and offered this kind of trade. Does that mean Joe Biden, the president of the United States, should be impeached? No, it means Hunter Biden's up to some questionable things. But unless you get Joe Biden tied in with this, you don't really have him on bribery.
Well, I agree that they are far from proving their case that this rises to the level of impeachment or criminal wrongdoing. Boy who cried wolf. I think that's broadly fair or characterizes Republicans on a lot of issues. There's a lot of condemning. There's especially a lot of, I think, selective condemning of federal government infringing on Americans' civil liberties and free speech. For a while, Republicans voted for it, right? They voted for the Patriot Act, as did Democrats, et cetera. There was not a lot of concern about the federal government's civil liberties abuses until, because of what happened with Trump, it became, I think, more obvious to Republicans how the system and the process can be weaponized against their own, whether that's finally a philosophically consistent concern for all Americans' rights being violated in the same way is another matter. So I'm certainly not rallying behind or cheering for the antics of congressional Republicans, but they have turned up a lot more evidence or suggestion of evidence of wrongdoing on the Biden part. We now know that Joe Biden's knowledge of what Hunter was doing had to have gone beyond what he said. The sweetheart deal that was offered is so incriminating and is not something Republicans really unraveled on their own. So I understand, frankly, if I'm the American people and I'm concerned about the lack of ethics in the Biden family, I don't know how I'd feel about how the Republicans have handled this thus far. Maybe it hasn't been nearly a good enough job, but I do think we've learned a lot more, and it is troubling, and we're going to continue to learn more as this investigation goes on. More Rising right after this.